Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Our mission today is a singular one. We are pulling back the curtain on one of the great muses of Cuban music.
That's
A
right.
woman whose life story is far more complex, contradictory, and, deeply pragmatic than the simple, glorious sadness of the bolero written about her. We are going beyond the melody and meeting María García y Cifuentes.
Exactly. And this isn't just some historical anecdote. It's an intimate, sometimes really brutal biography. We are tracing Maria's incredible journey from the grinding poverty of rural Pinar del Rio all the way through the high-stakes neon glamour of pre-revolutionary Havana, and then finally to a quiet, very complicated exile in Miami.
And our sources for this, they span over 40 years, from 1947 through the 1990s.
They do, and they offer this visceral look at her personal struggle, this constant negotiation between a need for stability and the pull of true love, all of it set against this backdrop of massive cultural and political upheaval.
It truly is a study in dichotomy, and that's the mission for you, the listener. We want to understand the profound choice Maria faced.
A huge choice.
She had two fundamentally different men vying for her future. On one hand, the secure, protective, yet violent control offered by a successful businessman.
And on the other,
On the other, the soulful, poor, artistic passion of the musician who would ultimately make her famous. The question we keep asking is, what is the real cost of choosing security over soul?
and that's where it gets so interesting. The ultimate irony is that she chose security, but her legacy. Her entire legacy is defined by the very passion she rejected.
We're going to unpack that decision starting right at the beginning. In 1947, Cuba, with the moment she fled her home and began her brutal apprenticeship in the city.
Let's do it.
So María García y Cifuentes was only 17. She's growing up in the Valle de Viñales in Pinar del Rio, which is a famously beautiful, green, lush part of Cuba.
Right, paradise.
Yeah.
But for her, it had become toxic.
It had, and she makes this massive, impulsive decision to escape, leaving her life as a guajira, a country girl, to try and make a life in the capital, Havana.
And it was an escape that was really fueled by desperation. It wasn't about dreams of glamour. The journey itself, I mean, it just sets the tone for the harsh reality that's waiting for her.
She hitched a ride, right, with a truck driver.
Yeah, a driver named Sixto, who was hauling livestock to the Gallegos slaughterhouse. And the way she described that journey, it's a clarity that is hard to forget.
And the trip itself was an immediate sensory overload, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
The truck was old, smelly, not exactly a romantic start.
Not at all. The cab just reeked. The air conditioning was, the open window. And all you could smell was diesel fumes mixed with the distinct, heavy odor of livestock, pigs mostly, who had soiled the manure-stained floorboards in the back. And she was traveling at what seemed to her like bewildering speeds, maybe 20 or 30 miles per hour. But for her, it was this dizzying change from the slow pace of the valley.
Sixto, the driver, he sounds like a character ripped from a novel. This strange mix of kindness and darkness.
He really is. He's a visual contradiction. The sources paint him with this really rough exterior, a gargoyle face, and several missing teeth.
So not a friendly-looking guy.
Not at all. When he opened his mouth to talk, you could almost see the shadows of exhaustion and hard living. But at first, he was genuinely kind. He played the role of the protective older man.
He showed her these moments of generosity that must have felt massive to a penniless country girl.
Oh, absolutely. He paid for her coffee and a sweet, doughy, honey-drenched bun at a roadside stop. He made sure she ate properly.
And he even bought her a ginger ale.
He did, a Canada Dry from a vending machine at a Standard Oil station. He found it completely hilarious and endearing when she belched delicately from the bubbles. He seemed like a decent man, He even wore a thin crucifix, which indicated some measure of faith or morality.
But that generosity came with this palpable, dark undercurrent, which just burst through as they got closer to the city. That kindness had an edge of something predatory.
It did. Sixto, who had been talking ceaselessly about his faithful wife and his 8 children, suddenly falls silent. He gets sullen as the smoke of Havana starts to smudge the horizon.
And then he pulls over.
Just before turning off the highway toward the slaughterhouse district, he pulls over and just starts to cry. Silent tears dripping down his face. Maria, trying to show gratitude for this long free ride, gives him a small, cautious nip on the cheek.
And his reaction was immediate and deeply disturbing. It just shatters that illusion of the protective father figure.
Yes. He immediately took her hand and guided it towards his lap, where beneath his trousers he had a massive, rigid erection.
Wow.
The sources describe it as suddenly rigid and engorged. It was a terrifying moment of sudden, ugly clarity for Maria. The realization that even kindness was conditional and that her body was already currency in this new world.
That mix of his tears, his emotional distress, and then this silent lust. What an ugly introduction to the city's realities.
Potent and ugly. And that transition from the beautiful pastoral valley she loved to the industrial side of Havana, it was physically sickening for her.
Her arrival was right in the slaughterhouse district, El Matadero.
Right. The air was just heavy, overwhelmed by the combined smell of fresh blood and entrails. But what was worse, and what really turned her stomach, was the smell from the nearby tannery. It created a viscous smell like lacquered, rotting flesh, an odor of chemical treatment mixed with decay.
She literally couldn't stomach it. The grand dream of Havana, the city of opportunity, results in her first act there being stumbling over to a corner and emptying her guts into a puddle of stagnant water.
A puddle that held her reflection, distorted by the muck, staring right back at her. A visceral moment of questioning. And she immediately rejected the cleaning job that Sixto's acquaintance offered her.
$1 a day, right?
$1 a day, working in the slaughterhouse, surrounded by torrents of flies and the unbearable stench of blood. She needed money, but not at the cost of her dignity or her health.
And that rejection, it really sets the pattern for her job search. It reveals the widespread danger she faced as a beautiful, uneducated young woman in the capital.
Precisely. She had skills. She knew how to sew, she could roll tobacco, but everywhere she went, from the small seamstress shops to the large tobacco factory, even the Café El Paraiso, the male managers, sought more than her labors.
And this wasn't subtle.
Not at all. It was constant groping, unwanted pinches, and demands for sexual favors in exchange for keeping her job.
You mentioned the manager at the sewing factory, who wore a medallion of the Virgin of Caridad, yet constantly pinched her behind. That detail is just so telling about the hypocrisy she encountered.
It is. It highlights the pervasive sexual harassment, the way the structure of employment offered no protection. This constant degradation forced Maria, who was analphabeta illiterate at the time, to seek work in the one area where her appearance was explicitly valued.
The nightlife.
And paradoxically, it offered her a degree of control.
Before we delve into the nightlife, we really have to talk about the deep familial trauma that fueled this desperate flight. The escape wasn't just about poverty. It was about escaping profound loss and abuse.
The sources are very clear that Maria was running from a deep shadow. First, there was the agonizing death of her mother, Concha. She was only 45, but had succumbed to cancer, which slowly stole her sight before it took her life.
And Maria was her caregiver.
She spent countless, exhausting hours tending to the messy business of care, listening to her blind mother whisper stubbornly about the goodness of the Lord while clutching her rosary beads.
That must have been just exhausting and emotionally crushing for a young woman. And it was compounded by her father, Manolo.
Manolo was a deeply complicated and destructive figure. A musician, a drunk, and physically abusive. The sources mention the sheer shock of him repeatedly slapping Maria after Concha's death.
He blamed her.
He blamed his own daughter for the loss, leaving the right side of her beautiful face darkened with black and blue bruises. The abandonment and cruelty she faced from her father, the one person she had left, was the final breaking point.
And there were those moments of intense public shame that she carried with her.
Yes, the lasting shame came from his crude public habits. She recalled watching him, like any other coarse, unthinking guajero, just dropping his trousers right out in the field to relieve himself amidst the oxen.
Oh my God.
Or lingering in the squalid outhouse without bothering to close the door. This history of public coarseness and private violence definitely instilled in Maria a visceral determination never to be poor or associated with that lack of dignity again. This is where her hyperpragmatism really begins.
But the tragedy doesn't end there. There's the ghost of her younger sister, Teresita, whose memory Maria carries with this crippling guilt.
Yeah, the tragedy of Teresita is murky, and that might be because Maria's memory of it was so painful. The sources give slightly conflicting accounts of her death. One mentions typhus or tuberculosis alongside two older brothers.
And the other?
The other, a later recollection by Maria, describes Teresita drowning near the Cascades where they played.
What's consistent, though, and most poignant, is the details surrounding Teresita's severe epilepsy.
The constant, exhausting effort of care. Maria had to force her sister to take the bitter phenobarbital pills, sometimes having to twist Teresita's hair back just to shove the pill doors in, which invariably led Teresita to cry, "You don't love me," or "I hate you, sister."
That's heartbreaking.
And Teresita also experienced intense withdrawal during puberty, pulling away from Maria. This led Maria to carry this immense, lasting guilt, believing she was somehow responsible for her sister's suffering and eventual death. She held on to a braid of Teresita's hair in an envelope, a tangible, ever-present connection to that trauma.
So Maria arrives in Havana carrying all of this poverty, parental abuse, the guilt of a sister's death, and she lands in the nightlife where survival is immediate and constant. Where does she first stay?
She finds a temporary, miserable sanctuary in a cheap hotel near the Old Quarter, which everyone referred to appropriately as the Hotel Cucaracha.
The Cockroach Hotel.
Exactly. It was utter filth. A dingy lobby, a room costing only a peseta a night, rife with chinches, bedbugs, and cockroaches. But there was a sliver of unexpected human kindness. The landlady, Senora Matilda, took pity on her and gave her a warm tortilla of potatoes and chorizo.
It was in this deeply desperate setting that she encountered the Catalan incident, which shows how quickly she adapted to the lawless necessity of survival.
She did. She was desperate for a few dollars. She stumbled into a shadowy place, a club or an office, where the owner, a man known only as the Catalan, offered her an alternative, degrading way to earn money in his office.
But she flipped the power dynamics.
She did. Driven by shame and necessity, she adapted. When she rifled through his trousers pockets, she wasn't just looking for payment, she was looking for control.
And what she found paints a vivid picture of the man and the world she was entering.
In his pocket, she found a small stiletto knife, several condoms, club cards for El Savoy, and a thick roll of bills. She stole 5 American dollar bills and the rest of the currency, both Cuban and American, which at the time were at equal value.
So she took what she needed to survive.
An act of desperate self-preservation. But her beauty was undeniable, and her entry into legitimate, if still risky, nightlife work came through a sad-faced photographer.
Enrique, the photographer with the glass eye.
Right, described as world-weary and sensitive, which perhaps made him less threatening to Maria. Violetta, a street-smart prostitute living in the Hotel Cucaracha, arranged the meeting. Enrique wanted to take her photograph for his shop window.
And she agreed to pose.
She did, and the one that truly captured attention was the iconic one. The virginal white lace wedding dress clutching a slightly wilted bouquet of roses. That black and white image with her dark eyes looking imploringly out at the world was placed prominently in the photographer's window.
And men gathered there daily just to look at it.
Daily. It was pure, idealized, and ultimately misleading beauty, used as a commercial draw. It launched her into work as a dancer, but the reality was working in dumps, constantly having to fight off unwanted advances.
She worked at places like the Lantern Cabaret, but refused managers' sexual advances constantly.
Always. She was fired by Orlando at the Knock Knock for not agreeing to be his woman.
And this constant state of defense led her to weaponize her own trauma, which is a chilling detail.
It is. She became adept at self-defense, using the most tragic memory she possessed. She recounts the incident with the manager of the club Paris, a hoodlum with a knife who was intent on raping her on his office table.
And she faked an epileptic fit.
She fell to the floor, feigning Teresita's severe fits, her head twisting violently, her teeth chattering, her body shaking uncontrollably, until the man, terrified and disgusted, backed away, thinking, "That woman is crazy." She survived by dredging up the worst parts of her past, turning suffering into a tool.
It just shows you the level of desperation and the constant threat she was under. She wasn't seeking fame. She was purely seeking a way to avoid starvation and abuse.
She was buying security, moment by moment. And that brings us right into 1949, where her life divides irrevocably, and she finds 2 paths to security, one of which costs her her soul.
So by 1949, Maria is this undeniable beauty, highly sought after, and she has 2 profoundly different men vying for her time and her future.
Right, and the contrast between them is central to this entire deep dive.
On one side, we have Ignacio Fuentes. He's the successful businessman who offered immediate, tangible security.
Highly visible, entrenched in the import-export business, mainly appliances, with his operations right by the bustling harbor, he had all the hallmarks of success. Fine clothes, a high-rise apartment, a certain caballero air when they first met.
But that gentleman facade dissolved pretty quickly.
It did. It revealed a dark, proprietary nature.
What does proprietary air mean in this context?
It meant control. It meant ownership. When they walked the streets, Ignacio's presence was so imposing and overtly possessive that other men didn't dare whistle at Maria or make advances.
And for Maria, who had spent years fighting off grops and pinches, that protection must have been incredibly seductive.
It was a shield. But the cost of that shield was quickly revealed. He was controlling, prone to sudden shifts in mood, and capable of violence. She didn't recognize the person he became once they were alone.
And on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, we have Nestor Castillo.
Nestor was everything Ignacio was not: poor, soulful, and devoted to his art. He was a musician, a talented trumpeter, singer, and writer, described as handsome as hell with a priestly demeanor.
A country boy from Oriente.
A true campesino de Oriente, and a solitary soul, un solitario.
Despite his artistic genius, his day job was humble.
Very humble. He worked as a waiter or a lackey at the exclusive Explorers Club near the Capitolio, mostly serving drinks and tidying up after wealthy English and American members. He was sensitive, often melancholy, and completely dedicated to his music and his older, more ambitious brother, Cesar.
So he offered Maria passion and soul, the poetry she secretly yearned for.
Exactly. And if we look at the intimate realities of these two relationships, the sources use these moments to draw the line between security and soul very, very sharply.
Ignacio's intimate life with her was transactional, right?
Transactional and steeped in a sense of detachment on her part. He offered material goods, but he demanded control. The sources describe these degrading moments where he'd pull over to the roadside and have Maria attend to him, undoing his white pantaloons.
And during their sexual encounters.
A controlling nature. He often pulled her jet black hair back roughly, asserting his dominance even as he penetrated her. Maria describes performing these acts with a profound resignation and detachment, which suggests her spirit was just absent even when her body complied.
But Nestor offered something entirely different, a connection that Maria had never experienced, one characterized by deep reverence and explosive passion.
It was revolutionary for her. Nestor offered worship, not ownership. Their physical intimacy was intense and almost spiritual. She described their connection as so visceral that just embracing near the water made her gasp with pleasure and recognition.
And his passion wasn't just physical.
It was reverent. He worshipped her body with incredible intensity, licking her until she was quivering, making her feel herself the object of his earthly worship. He was gentile and humble about the whole business, which was just the antithesis of Ignacio's aggressive macho pride.
Yet, despite this magnificent soul-level connection, the specter of poverty haunted them. Nestor was impractical. His value was in his music, not his money.
And that was the fatal flaw. Nestor, filled with love and hope, proposes marriage. He confesses his dreams of building a life with her, suggesting two options: stay poor together in Havana, scraping by, or return to his family farm in Oriente.
But Maria's choice wasn't about love. It was about survival. A choice rooted deep in the trauma of her childhood.
Exactly. She was haunted by the memory of her mother, Concha, dying slowly, blindly, without dignity. She remembered her own shame, the abuse inflicted by Manolo, her practical soul, which the sources really emphasize, kicked in.
And she concluded that a life with Nestor, despite his soul and his passion, would inevitably be a poor man's life.
She told him she needed time, agonizing over the decision, but knowing in her heart that she couldn't risk destitution again. She chose Ignacio's stability, despite the tremendous guilt and heartache.
And this decision is the linchpin of the entire narrative, right? It was pragmatic, but it set up all the tragedy that followed.
It did, and Ignacio, the calculated businessman, wasn't going to leave anything to chance. When Maria returned to him, he immediately demonstrated his proprietary power by showing her exactly how much he knew about Nestor.
He had been tracking him. That's not just jealousy, that's surveillance.
It's chillingly calculated. Ignacio knew Nestor's name, his job at the Explorers Club, his exact address, even his lunch break schedule. Maria's gut reaction, her stomach knotting up, showed her that Ignacio wasn't just a rich lover. He was a serious, controlling adversary.
And he solidified his claim not with love, but with cold, hard cash.
He offered her $20 bills for your Pepito and promises of a legitimate life where she could open a fancy clothing business and be a legitimate model.
But the deception went further than just winning Maria back. Ignacio ensured Nestor was completely removed from the equation.
He orchestrated an elegant, brutal removal. He contacted Nestor's ambitious older brother, Cesar Castillo, who was already looking for a path to the U.S., later known as the Mambo King, and paid him $500.
A massive sum at the time.
A fortune. He was essentially buying Nestor's future. Cesar's mission was clear: take Nestor away from Havana for good.
Nestor must have been devastated. The sources make it clear he didn't want to leave.
He was completely mournful and resistant to the idea of leaving Cuba, the place he loved, for the cold, modern anonymity of New York. Cesar literally had to drag him along.
How did he finally get him on the plane?
The sources depict Nestor stepping onto the Pan-American clipper to Miami only after an intense, desperate final night being fortified by a night in the whorehouses, a quart of añejo rum.
And a threat.
And the terrifying assurance that Cesar, the ambitious older brother, would beat him to death if he didn't comply. It's a tragic, almost cinematic image of a sensitive artist being forced into exile by money and brute force.
It's heartbreaking. The artist leaves Cuba in physical and emotional submission, while Maria stays behind, seemingly having won the stability she craved. But we know the story doesn't end there.
No. It's the beginning of the great irony, which brings us to the height of her glamour and the moment the choice she made comes back to torment her.
By 1953, with Nestor safely out of the picture, Maria had fully embraced her role as the successful mistress. She was living with Ignacio in a high-rise apartment on Calle 25, a world away from the filth of the Hotel Cucaracha.
And this period defined her public image. She thrived, yes, but the sources note a definite shift in her personality. A haughty, distanced manner began to emerge, coupled with a growing sense of vanity. She became a symbol of Cuban glamour, specifically targeted at American tourists looking for exotic beauty.
Her modeling career really took off. She became ubiquitous in those glamorous American magazines of the era.
She was a pinup queen. In Life magazine in May 1954, she's featured winking while hitching up dark nylons. Show magazine ran a photo with the caption, "One dish enjoying another," as she posed eating ice cream in a tight leotard.
But it's the way she was coded that is most fascinating. What do you mean by coded?
Her complex ethnic appearance. She was light-skinned but clearly mulatto, was marketed to appeal to a wide audience. She was described as having a Spanish complexion and an Ava Gardner build.
But there was also a more exoticized angle.
Oh, yes. In one truly shocking caption, accompanying a mock jungle backdrop shot, the magazine suggested there was something most African and savage about her features. It was exoticism to sell the image. She was the product of a marketing fantasy, designed to embody the raw, sensual energy of Havana.
This glamorous image, however, masked a profound, lingering insecurity. Her illiteracy. This is where her secret life and true dignity really emerge.
This is one of the most important contrasts in her character. Maria, the famous model who appeared in international magazines, was still an alpha beta. But she was fiercely intelligent and determined to change that. She secretly moonlit with Lazaro, the local bootblack and street sweeper.
Her teacher.
Her maestro, as she affectionately called him.
A bootblack teaching one of Havana's most glamorous models to read and write. That juxtaposition is just incredible.
It speaks to her enduring practical humility. Lazaro's lessons were a point of immense dignity for her. She saw literacy as the true path to control, something Ignacio's money could never buy.
And Lazaro recognized Nestor's character, didn't he?
He did. He told Maria that the musician, when he came to visit, played the trumpet with a sweet melody, and that he saw a poet's thoughts in Nestor's eyes. His quiet wisdom reinforced the value of the man Maria had rejected.
So she's living this complex double life. Public glamour, private intellectual ambition. But 4 years after she sent Nestor away, that pragmatic choice comes back to haunt her in the form of an inescapable bolero.
In 1956, beautiful Maria of my soul, La Bella Maria de mi alma, hit the airwaves and became an instant smash. It was a tormenting presence. You couldn't escape it.
It was everywhere.
Constantly played over CMQ radio, blaring from car radios, record shops, arcades across the city. The radio announcers were hyping the song as the newest hit by the fabulous Mambo Kings.
How did Maria, now secure in her high-rise, react to hearing this public declaration of undying love from the man she had forsaken?
It was a tremendous psychological blow, mixed with immense pride. The sadness of the melody was glorious, and it made her believe that Nestor still loved her deeply. She finally managed to fully decipher the few simple letters Nestor had sent.
Now that she can read.
Exactly. And she realized the song was nothing less than a public, powerful confession of his undying love. The song idealized her, transforming her struggle into tragic romance.
She was basking in this self-glorification, believing she was the eternal muse, but that idealized vision was shattered almost immediately by a harsh dose of reality.
Yes. The universe has a cruel sense of timing. A visiting musician, Alberto Morales from the famous Mario Bauza Orchestra, came by the club with a small package from Nestor. Maria, still flushed with pride over the song, casually asked about him.
And he just tells her.
Alberto responded matter-of-factly, casually informing her, "Oh, Nestor, he's happily married to a great lady, a Cubana, Dolores, and he's got 2 kids now. He's very happy."
The news crushed her. And the pain, it wasn't from heartbreak, was it? It was from something else.
It was the pain of realizing she was disposable, or at least replaceable. The song, which she had viewed as a tribute to eternal love, was now simply a beautiful song written by a happy married father about a painful chapter in his youth.
Her Guajira pride was offended.
She felt like una tramposa, a cheap tramp, to use the kind of language her mother used to condemn loose women. Her performance that night was completely disjointed. She couldn't concentrate.
And her reaction was impulsive, desperate, and immediately self-destructive.
Reckless. In her unsettled state, reeling from the realization that the man she loved had moved on, she impulsively slept with a handsome Y&R advertising executive, Vicente Torres. She went up to his suite at the Hotel National overlooking the harbor, seeking immediate, meaningless validation, an act born purely out of spite and internal pain.
But the bolero had stirred too much. She couldn't accept that the memory, the passion, the connection were truly dead. She became determined to secure one last piece of Nestor's soul.
She became fixated on the idea of conceiving his child, a final, desperate attempt to bind his spirit to hers and give the memory a tangible form. This was in the summer of 1956. She traveled to New York with her dancer friend Gladys.
And Nestor agreed to meet her.
He was nervous about being unfaithful to his wife, Dolores, but he agreed to a clandestine afternoon rendezvous arranged via a code name to protect his marriage.
What was the code name?
Omar in Havana, which she dialed into a payphone at Claremont's pharmacy in New York. The whole setup was like a spy rendezvous, highlighting the drama and high-stakes nature of this final meeting.
And the setting for their initial meeting is almost ironic, given their intent.
They chose a church, a sanctimonious place that somehow always made them both feel good. Perhaps trying to capture the innocent piety they carried from their country upbringings, or maybe seeking forgiveness preemptively. But that piety gave way quickly to the deep, physical connection they shared.
And the final, intense encounter unfolded later that afternoon on the 22nd floor of the New Yorker hotel. The sources provide extraordinary detail here.
They do, and it has to be framed not as mere sensationalism, but as evidence of the sheer mythical magnitude of their passion in Maria's memory. This wasn't just sex, it was a desperate, final attempt to merge their souls.
The details she recalled later are striking.
She recounted that when she knelt before him, his appendage sprang out with such force that it tore the seams of his boxers. Later, she would tell her daughter, using her scientific oncologist's language, that his penis was some 40 centimeters long, or longer than her forearm, thick as her wrist.
That sounds less like a realistic depiction and more like a mythic, idealized memory of passion.
That's precisely what it is. It's a memory given mythical proportions because it was the last time she would ever see him. Despite the profound shame Nestor felt afterwards, she pulled him onto the bed, determined to fulfill her mission. She tried desperately to rationalize the act, convincing herself that a man who loved a woman in such a consuming physical way must truly love her.
But her practical, physical reality was brutally unforgiving.
It was. Maria returned to Havana, waiting anxiously for the pregnancy that would tie Nestor's spirit to her life. But her monthlies returned with their usual punctuality. Her desperate, impulsive attempt had failed.
And then came the final, tragic irony just weeks later.
The word spread through the musician community in Havana. Nestor Castillo was dead. The poor, soulful country boy, the one she had chosen to abandon, who hated New York, met a sudden, violent end.
A car accident.
He was driving home from a gig, the Mambo 9 on West 58th, during a snowfall near New York. He lost control on the icy roads and collided headlong into a tree. The irony is just suffocating. He died in the cold, foreign snow, far from the Cuban sun, and the woman whose security had indirectly forced him north.
That song, Beautiful Maria of My Soul, the monument to the love she couldn't afford, was now playing everywhere as a mournful tribute to a lost talent and a testament to her tragic choice.
And yet life, as it often does, had a surprise. Early in 1958, Maria missed her period. She went to the obstetrician and learned she was pregnant. It wasn't Nestor's child, it was Ignacio's. She gave birth to her daughter, Teresita, after a 16-hour labor, choosing to view the child as a gift granted by God, a path to stability rather than the lost legacy of the musician.
The life Maria had fought so hard to secure with Ignacio was about to be obliterated by the political landscape. The revolution triumphed in 1959.
Initially, Maria was actually supportive. She saw Fidel Castro as an improvement over the corrupt Batista regime. She even attended his triumphant procession and hoisted her infant daughter up to see the new future.
But that revolutionary fervor quickly turned into economic and political chaos that directly threatened the elite class she had married into.
It did, and while the nation was collapsing, Ignacio was preoccupied with the most superficial concerns imaginable. This detail really highlights the decadence of the class that was being overthrown.
He was obsessed with his receding hairline and diminishing virility.
It's a powerful symbol of decaying morality. He sought increasingly bizarre, almost desperate treatments. Ground bull testicles, dried donkey dung, paraffin applied to his scalp. He even received painful B12 and distilled water injections directly into his penis to supposedly revolutionize its amplitude.
The sheer dedication to vanity in the face of national upheaval tells you everything about the priorities of the privileged class at that moment.
Exactly. They were completely disconnected from the reality of the revolution. This obsession with physical control mirrored his obsession with controlling Maria. But his preoccupation didn't save him. Ignacio soon left to attend to business, a vague task he never returned from, later feared perished in the ensuing chaos.
Maria realized she had to leave.
So in 1961, she took her daughter, Teresita, who was not quite 4, and boarded a Pan Am Clipper for Miami, repeating Nestor's pass north, but under the banner of necessity, not exile.
And she paid a heavy price for leaving. Her life savings, a hard-won $2,237, and all her possessions, the fine clothes, the jewelry, the luxury items, were confiscated by the new regime.
She only managed to bring a few precious items: photos of her family and Nestor, a small crucifix, her Timex watch from Ignacio, and crucially, Nestor's faded love letters.
Exile in Miami brought immediate hardship, financial struggle, and surprisingly, intense racism.
Despite her light complexion, she arrived during a period of intense segregation. They stayed in a rundown motel near the turnpike that still featured whites-only signs on the water fountains and restrooms.
And she was often mistaken for black.
The sources indicate that until Miami became accustomed to the massive influx of Cubans, she was often mistaken for black due to her slight African features, or simply regarded as other. She encountered intense frostiness and dirty looks when she tried to use certain facilities. It was a harsh reminder that the Spanish complexion that earned her fame in Havana meant nothing in segregated America.
But she found stability again through a kind soul who helped her rebuild her life.
She was helped by Gustavo, a sensible, middle-aged bachelor counselor from Catholic Relief Services. He provided practical, non-dynamic love. He married Maria in 1962, becoming a solid, reliable stepfather who loved Teresita, buying her books and taking her out for ice cream.
This tranquil, stable environment, so different from the volatile world of Ignacio, allowed Teresita to flourish.
And she did. She became Dr. Teresa Garcia, an oncologist, a testament to Maria's ultimate success in securing a non-poor man's life for her child.
But this stability ended abruptly with Gustavo's death.
He died peacefully of a diabetes-induced heart-related malady while sitting in his office helping a newly arrived exile couple with paperwork.
And the sources note Teresita's reaction to her mother moving on, which reveals the depth of the void Gustavo left.
Teresita felt a profound sense of violation when Maria, about a year after Gustavo's death, began sleeping with a new suitor, Rafael, in Gustavo's bed. It felt like a transgression of something sacred, a violation of the only true father figure she'd ever known.
Now, decades later, in the 1980s, the myth of Maria explodes back into her quiet, stable life when her daughter encounters the literary phenomenon the Mambo Kings play songs of love.
Teresita, now Dr. G, was shocked. She read a review that featured Maria and Nestor's Havana passion described in exuberant and often erotic detail. She attended a reading by the author, Oscar Hijuelos, and was outraged.
The fictional Maria, the sexually voracious muse of the novel, was nothing like the practical, serious mother she knew.
The one who wore curlers to take out the trash and worried about bills. Exactly. She felt the novel was a massive transgression against her mother's hard-won respectability.
So she contacted the author.
She did. She called him multiple times, expressing intense indignation. But eventually, she had a conversation with him where he explained the process of fiction, how he blended reality and fantasy into a pastiche. And Teresita found a measure of empathy, if not acceptance. She realized the novel floated above their world like a bird, a piece of art unlikely to truly affect their stable, anonymous existence.
But the story was only amplified when the film adaptation, The Mambo Kings, premiered in 1991.
The story became global. Maria watched the movie, and despite being the inspiration for the central romance, she felt utterly disconnected, thinking she had been reduced to a watered-down walk-on character. The actress was lovely, but the character lacked the complexity, the trauma, and the pragmatic struggle of the real Maria.
It took a local radio controversy for the real Maria to finally step forward and claim her truth, not out of vanity, but frustration.
A nostalgia radio show on WCMQ called Cuando Cuba Era Cuba queried listeners about the real Maria, the muse for the famous bolero. And a deluge of Cuban women called in, all of them claiming the identity.
The host had to assign them numbers. Maria numero siete.
Exactly. And the real Maria, who had spent a lifetime seeking stability and dignity, finally lost her patience with the erasure of her true self. She decided she had to come forward. She called the station and reluctantly agreed to appear on air, bringing Nestor's faded letters and the iconic photograph as undeniable proof.
This wasn't about fame, it was about asserting her singular historical identity.
Right. And her appearance was so dignified. As the host introduced her, they played the original 1955 bolero in its entirety. Maria, smoking a Virginia Slim, sat staring at her daughter. Her measured demeanor won local notice, leading to a feature in El Nuevo Herald's art supplement, which even published one of the verses she had written.
If Cuba were a man, a testament to her secret, hard-won intellectual dignity.
And she received invitations to popular talk shows like Cristina Saralegui and Sabado Gigante, but she politely refused them.
She had already learned that lesson, hadn't she? About public life.
She knew the camera shatters complexity and turns people into easily consumed images. She preferred to protect the dignity she had finally achieved. Her most poignant reflection came during that radio show.
What did she say?
She said, "I was angry that so many women were claiming to be me. But you know what? Even as I sat there talking to that very nice man, I got the feeling I was wasting my time. None of us can go back. All those memories are what? Just little dreams."
Wow. A summation of a life spent chasing security, only to find fame tied to a past choice she regretted.
But the legacy of Nestor and Maria found a quiet, cyclical resolution in the next generation, didn't it?
It did. Maria eventually met Nestor's son, Eugenio Castillo, at a party in New York.
Eugenio was a gallant schoolteacher, described by Teresita as unfluid and earthbound, very different from the passionate, volatile image of the fictional Mambo King. And the connection was immediate.
And Eugenio and Teresita, the children of the two lovers who were separated by pragmatism and deception, they developed a relationship over the following years.
It's almost as if the universe finally allowed the family lines to merge.
And
Maria, meanwhile, found her final measure of peace not in romance, but in intellectual companionship. She enrolled in a writing class and found kinship with her writing teacher, Luis. The former analphabeta, secretly tutored by a bootblack, was now exchanging her own verses, which were nothing more than songs of love, finding pride and closure in her unexpected journey to becoming a writer.
Okay, let's unpack this journey and synthesize the aha moment for you, our listener. We've seen Maria's life as this tapestry woven with intense, contrasting experiences, from the brutal reality of Sixto's truck and the Hotel Cucaracha to the heights of high-rise glamour and the tragedy of true, soulful love found and lost.
And she chose stability. She chose Ignacio over Nestor's poor man's life.
But the supreme irony, the defining realization of this deep dive, is that Maria, the highly practical, image-conscious woman who fled poverty and rejected Nestor's dream, only achieved fame and a form of immortality through the one thing she turned away from.
The soulful, ephemeral art of the poor country musician. Her real, complicated story, the shame, the secret lessons with Lazaro, the intellectual aspirations, it all became entirely overshadowed by the simple, glorious sadness of a bolero. The song became her most enduring truth, a testament to the fact that you cannot bury true passion, even with money.
It forces us to confront a provocative question. Is the version of ourselves immortalized by a lover's art? The idealized, tragic, beautiful muse of a song, more real or perhaps just more enduring than the complicated, difficult life we actually lived? It's a question worth mulling over long after the music fades and the final verse is written.